So I'm on a visit to the UK that's going to last about 6 days, and I'm primarily visiting a number of different institutions here. I did an event yesterday at the US Ambassador's Residence talking to young leaders from across the UK about what NASA's doing, what our plans are. I'm here visiting ECMWF. I'm visiting some local schools, a girls' school in Surrey. I'm giving a talk there that'll be transmitted to girls' schools across the UK. Diversity in STEM education, and especially encouraging girls and other underrepresented groups to go into science, is a big passion of mine. So whenever I go on any kind of trip, I always try to reach out to an audience where I can speak primarily to girls and about trying to get them interested in science. I'm also here to speak at the British Education Technology Training session. Again, a lot of outreach to kids, STEM outreach kind of events. Then I go on to Norway to an Arctic conference, and then to Denmark to talk to their space-related industries and universities. It's really fascinating for me to be able to come here and visit ECMWF, because if you look at NASA's mission, ours is really to try to make the best Earth observations possible. So we have 19 satellites in orbit around the Earth. We make observations every day with aircraft around the world, with suborbital platforms. So we're trying to say, what are the best measurements that can be made? How can they fit into future better weather forecasts, better climate modeling? Here at ECMWF, you're really at the cutting edge of doing weather forecasting and looking at Earth's climate. And so the partnerships that between the two organizations in terms of saying, what are the data that NASA is collecting? How can they be best used in ECMWF's models? So there's a lot of ties, sort of, I would say, at the working researcher level between the two organizations. And so for me, it's quite interesting to come here to be able to learn about the work that we're doing together, sort of again at the fundamental research level, and how that's helping ECMWF improve its forecasting. I think it's really critical for organizations like NASA and ECMWF to always be looking for ways of how can we make closer ties. You know, again, NASA's trying to say, what is the best measurements that we can make so that weather forecasts can continue to improve? That's important, obviously, not just because we want to know what the weather is, but as increasingly with climate change, the severe weather that we've seen increasing around the globe, you really want to make sure that our ability to forecast that severe weather, to save lives around this planet, is incredibly critical. And so whatever we can do at NASA to be making sure that we're making the best measurements possible, feeding those as best we can to organizations around the world who are doing weather forecasting, climate modeling, we want to make those ties as strong as we can. You know, when we talk to organizations around the world, what we're always trying to say is, what can we do better? You know, are these the measurements you need? What are your priorities going forward? And how can we reflect on what we're doing and see how we could potentially be better aligned in the future? And so I think there's a real feedback between saying, what is the modeling we're doing? What's the modeling that's going on here at ECMWF? We work very closely, obviously, with NOAA, NCAR, different organizations in the US, always as a global research community saying, how can we move the science forward? I think at one point in time, you know, all the different countries were sort of working on what they were working on, but we're increasingly really going to a global model of international research collaboration. You know, with this idea of, you know, we've got a changing climate, what's going on is extremely complex, and so can we leverage what everybody's doing? Everybody has a slightly different approach. You look at the best of that and really move the science forward. At NASA, we're really focused in a number of different areas. Earth science, trying to understand the Earth as a system, moving forward to try to understand Earth's climate is critical, and that's why we have all these satellites in orbit around the Earth and why it's such a priority at NASA. We also obviously have a strong interest in human spaceflight, and right now we're really focused on the next destination, which is how do we move humans beyond low Earth orbit, where we are on the International Space Station with all of our international partners, out to the vicinity of the moon, and then to the surface of Mars. Mars is really our primary goal because we think scientifically at some point in the past, several billion years ago, when water was stable on the surface of Mars, that life might have evolved on Mars. So we need to get scientists down on the surface of Mars to really find out, did life evolve on some body in our solar system besides Earth? So we're doing it step by step. The first is all the work we do with our international partners on the International Space Station, trying to make sure we can keep humans healthy in space, It's a long way to Mars, 8 months there, 8 months back. We have a lot of work still to do to make sure we can keep people healthy for that long duration in microgravity. Then we're going to move out to the vicinity of the moon, where you can test technologies, test capabilities, but still make it home safely to the Earth in about 4 days. Huge emphasis at NASA. Our final area that we have a lot of emphasis on is actually that first A in NASA, which most people don't know what it stands for, and that's aeronautics. And we do a lot of the fundamental aeronautical research in the US that have made planes safer, more fuel efficient, and for example, we even worked with the FAA on their next generation air traffic control system. So there's still a lot of fundamental aviation research that goes on at NASA. We think we can get humans safely to Mars and of course return them home safely in the 2030s, and that's President Obama's vision that was stated near the beginning of his presidency, and NASA's very much on target to make that happen. Again, we're going to be at the space station through about the mid-2020s. Out to then around that same time period, we'll have humans out in the vicinity of the moon, and then we think by the mid-2030s we'll be ready to get humans out, probably first to orbit Mars. We don't think we'll be able to get them down to the surface right away because entry, descent, and landing on Mars, especially with very large masses, is still something that technologically is a big challenge. But we think we'll have humans out at Mars by the mid-2030s.